My name's Kimberly Modesitt. I own NatEv Life Landscaping. It's just known as NatEv Life. But I'm here again to talk about the do's and don'ts of landscaping. It was mislabeled on the website is what I'm actually talking about today. I am going to ask, even though Paul has encouraged you, please hold your questions until the end. And I don't mind answering or trying to answer your questions, but let's just hold until the end, okay? So everybody got my lovely little handout? Okay. If you don't have it, it's on the back table. You can raise your hand and I will encourage Paul to bring a couple around. They're orange. You have them. My original is white. They just printed in orange or yellow. Okay. Alrighty. So I wanted to talk about the common do's and don'ts of landscaping because there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of things that are done incorrectly by other landscape companies. It's not necessarily that they're always doing it to take advantage of you. A lot of times it's because they're not trained properly. They don't have the background and the knowledge to know what to do correctly. So if I can help educate you guys, you know what the right questions are to ask and what to think about before you go in and start your landscape. Just to give you a little bit about my background, if you haven't heard me speak before, I am a horticulturalist and a landscape designer. I have my degree in both. I've been doing this for about 26 years now, originally up in Canada, and I moved down here almost 20 years ago and have been working in Florida since. I love to become friends with my customers, my clients. The reason for that is because I stand behind what I do 100%. I want to make sure that what I create for you, what we create together, is something that you're going to love and want to grow with and watch grow in your garden. That way, if you have a problem or a concern or just want to say, hey, come back and look at my landscape because it looks amazing and I never thought it was going to look this way. Great, please call me. So on this paper, I kind of broke it down into sections. The first part where it has the bullet points, those are the things that you definitely want to think about. And we're going to break them down a little further into the do's and don'ts of each of those topics. So the first one is a dream and a plan. Please don't call a landscape company. I love Brightline, they're quick. Please don't call a landscape company and say, I need somebody to help me with my landscaping, but don't have a plan or a vision in place first. You don't have to necessarily know what you want in terms of what it's going to look like, the final product, but you have to have an idea of what your focus points are. It's really frustrating to me to meet with a customer for the first time and be told, well, I don't really know what I want. I kind of don't like what's over here and I don't like what's over here. One of the best customers that I meet are the people that say, I like this, this, and this. Not sure what they're called. Here's a picture. Okay, great. Show me those pictures. Go ahead and reach out to me with Pinterest or your neighborhood pictures. Send them to me because that gives me more insight into what your likes and dislikes are. One of the common questions I ask, what colors do you like? What colors do you not like? If you don't like orange, I'm not going to put orange in your landscape. I might try to sneak a little bit in just because orange is really pretty. But I really listen to who I'm working with and I create a custom landscape for everybody that I work with. So it's not going to be a Joe Blow cookie cutter landscape that this neighbor has, this neighbor has, this neighbor has. The entire community looks the exact same. Why would you want that? But that's what we see. That's what we're given. That doesn't mean that's what you have to stay with. You can keep that if you want to, change it around a little bit as far as positioning and add more to it to be more creative, but we don't have to stay with that. And all that comes back to the planning. Things that you want to think about for your landscape. Are you looking for just a welcoming entrance? When you moved into your home or somebody did the landscape for you, did they do that typical, okay, here's my pygmy date palm that's right in front of my main front living window. I have no view out into my front yard whatsoever. Or did they put it right in front of your pathway up to the front door? Again, no view out into the neighborhood. Yes, I understand there's a thing called privacy, right plant, right place, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. Are you looking for privacy? How can we achieve that without doing the common layered look of landscaping? Do I want to create outdoor rooms? Do you guys know what outdoor rooms are? It's pretty self-explanatory. Outdoor rooms are a space where you have different functionality of that space. So whether you have a water feature and you have a place to go and sit and listen, or as you're walking through your garden, you have this trickling sound of a bubbling water rock or a little stream going through. It is doable in small landscapes. Do you have a fireplace? Or not necessarily, a fire pit, I guess, where you go and have chairs around? That's another outdoor room. Do you have a living space? It doesn't have to be a screened enclosure. You can have a pergola or a trellis that has beautiful vines growing up and around it that gives you an immersion experience and incorporates you into the landscape as well. Not just you being a part of it, you're actually part of your landscape. Do you want peekaboo gardens? I love creating peekaboo gardens where you don't see everything all at once. You have these meandering paths or meandering shapes and flows to the lawn if you want them, where you don't see everything all at once. It's beautiful to come across something new all the time. Paths through the space, same idea. If you have paths going through the space in a curved manner instead of straight, that's wonderful. There's the orange I'm going to put in your landscape. Do you have dogs or kids or grandkids that you need to be conscious of? There's been a few times over the past 26 years where I've done these beautiful designs and then come to learn after the fact that they have a dog that loves to dig. That just threw everything out the window of what I've just created, because you can't have an incredible perennial flower garden if you let your dog run free in your yard, because then you get all these holes dug up and your plants are lying sideways on the ground. Then there's nothing you're going to be able to do to fix that. However, there are some plants that are a little bit more tolerant of it, especially ones with big spikes and thorns on them. And water features, we already discussed that, or fire pits. So if you're looking for privacy around a pool, why do you have to plant that screen or that hedge right behind your pool screen? If you have a backyard beyond that, what's the point of having any property at all? Push that privacy screen further back so you have this expansive space, grass, ground cover, whatever it may be, in front of your privacy hedge, which now expands your pool experience too. Instead of feeling closed and hedged into this hardscape around your pool, you have this softer landscape in behind it, still giving your privacy from your neighbors, probably not airplanes, but all around you, where you still can enjoy your pool or your outdoor family time without having to have onlookers. There's so many times that you come up and you see, okay, well, here's your croton hedge, or here's your arboricola hedge. And for those of you that don't know what those are, this is a type of croton. This is an arboricola. There's the typical green arboricolas, which I forgot to grab. Yes, I forgot to grab it, but they look like that, but they're all green. Or you have the dwarf firebush, this guy, used as a hedge. And they plant those in a row right behind your pool screen. And then they'll oftentimes put either a Christmas palm or a pygmy date palm on the corners to flank it, and said, okay, here you go. No, we can do way better than that. Why does it have to be in a straight line? Why not change up the texture, the color? Why not make it a little bit more curved? You don't have to go crazy and spend $1 million on a landscape. I haven't done $1 million landscape yet, but why spend all that money when we can do the same idea, curve it out a little bit and make it more inviting? The next thing I want to talk about is your budget. Please, please, please have in mind a realistic budget. I'm not asking you down to the penny of what you're looking to spend, but have a ballpark idea. One of the most frustrating things that I also experience is going up to a client and saying, okay, we've had this long discussion about what you're looking for. Great, you have a plan, you have an idea, you have all these dreams that you want to do. What is your realistic budget? On average, one side of your house for an average landscape is going to run you about $5,000 to $6,000. Ish. We can go way more than that. We can go a little bit less than that, but typically it's about $5,000 to $6,000. If you're looking to have this incredibly beautiful landscape done for $1,000, it's not going to happen. It just the reality of it. You can argue with me. I've had people argue with me. Oh, you can bring your labor prices down. You can do it for this. I'm like, no, I can't. I'm not out to take advantage of you. Personally, that's the way I run my business. My costs for my labor are based upon fuel. It's based upon what my wages are. I have to take into account workman's comp, my insurance, the electricity, my office fees, all that comes into the labor costs. It's not just what you pay your guys, so you can mark it down. All that has to be taken into consideration. The budget, if you go in and I spend typically anywhere from a day up to 2 weeks, sometimes on my landscape designs, and I go and present them and then I give you the estimate and you say, oh, well, that's out of my budget. I'm out that money. Because if you turn around and then say, oh, well, I can't do this, I'm sorry, we have to part ways at that point. I don't charge you for that. Where I make my money is on the back end of it. When my company comes in and does the install for you, I roll that into the cost of the landscape at that point. If you choose to take my design and run with it and give it to another company trying to get a better price, then yeah, I'm going to charge you for my design. But a lot of times, I'm kind of a nice guy, and I still have a problem after 26 years of asking for money for my time, but then I'm out on my labor too. I'm not one of those people that takes the iPad out into the field with me and says, okay, this is what you're gonna get. I really put a lot of thought and time into what I'm creating for you so it's special and unique. I think about my plant combinations. I'm not gonna give you the same thing that I'm creating for somebody else. I can't do that. That's not my nature. So please understand that budget is huge. If a landscape company is ethical, and I know this is a concern, I don't want to tell people what my budget is because then they know, oh, I've got $27,000 to spend on landscape. They're going to spend every bit of that $27,000 because that's the number that you gave. If they are ethical, they will create what you're looking for without taking advantage of you. I've been given budgets before of $40,000 to do a landscape project, and I have tried every bit of my effort to spend that money. And on that particular job, I came in estimated at $23,000. I gave her everything that she was looking for. And when the final invoice came in, we were actually at $19,500. So if they are an ethical company, they will take your idea of your budget, what you're looking for, and create it for you. If what I present to you or they present to you is out of what you can afford at this point in time, don't just wash your hands and walk away. There's ways we can mitigate this. We can mitigate it by using smaller plants. You don't have to have the instant 15 to 25 gallon size plants. You can put a smaller size pot in or plant in. It's gonna grow. Yeah, it's gonna be a little smaller to begin with, but it's gonna grow. You don't have to be worried about that. We can also phase it. I've been doing phase projects with my customers for 26 years now. In fact, beginning of this year, we finished a phase project with one of my clients. It was one of my first landscape clients down here. That's been 16 years. We've done a project with him every couple of years and added onto it, and it's worked. So don't be afraid to say, okay, this is what I can do for now. This is what my focus things are. Typically what I'll say is, okay, clear out the old if you're working with an existing landscape, put in the skeleton plants, which are your shrubs, your bushes, your trees, and then mulch the rest, and then add in when you have an extra 200-300, whatever. Add in those portions as you can go along, okay? Right plant, right place. This is a big one. Just because you commonly see plants in a landscape now doesn't mean that that's the right plant for that place in the landscape. We're going to talk a little bit about what you see commonly on foundation plantings. These guys are some of the big ones. This is a Viburnum suspensum. This is Arboricola trinet. The green version of that is normal. This is another normal one, the copperleafs. That's another normal one, the podocarpus. These are often plants that you see right along your foundation and literally touching the wall when you install them. Why? This podocarpus is not the dwarf, this is the full size. This is a tree. Why would you plant that right against your foundation, right underneath your living room window that's 2 feet off the ground, and you have to have somebody come in and prune it every week or every 2 weeks just to keep it at the height, and then it looks ugly. It looks threadbare, it looks thin, it's not happy, it's telling you, you're giving me too much of a haircut, please stop, please let me grow, move me somewhere else. These guys are the slower growing variety of the green arboricolas. They will still get 6 to 8 feet tall. Okay, 4 to 6 feet tall. The green ones, not the full-size tree species. There is a more dwarf green. Lucerne is one cultivar of them. They get 6 to 8 feet tall. Why would you plant those as a foundation planting? Why would you plant them so that on install they look like this? They're touching. These are supposed to be planted 3 feet on center, which means that the center of this plant, and that's still short, the center of this plant to the center of this plant is supposed to be 3 feet. Because if it grows ultimately to 6 feet, you always take the lower number of the estimated full-size growth. So if it's 6 to 8 feet, I always go with the 6 feet. That means that this half of the plant has 3 feet to grow this way, and then this half of the plant has 3 feet to go that way, and it will fill in the space. I'm not interested in instant impact landscaping, where we plant like this and it's touching. You're going to have major problems in the future. You're going to have growth issues. It doesn't have room to grow. It's not going to have room to spread those branches out. All it's going to do is drop all its inner leaves. You're going to have little bits of leaves on the outside tips of them. Yeah, it kind of looks pretty. Not really. You're going to have disease issues. You're going to have insect issues. It's just a whole plethora of issues that we don't want if it's planted properly. Why do you also have to plant it in a line? The reason I had it set like this before is because this is a lot prettier to look at than in a line. This has more airflow and growth for it to grow than in a line. Okay, so that goes the same for the firebush. There are a couple different species of plants that I talked about have different growth rates. This one is, oh, they're side by side. This guy here is the one that's typically planted. Hang on, let me come around and lift it up for those that can't see. This is the one that's typically planted, that's called the dwarf firebush. You know what dwarf means in Florida? 8 to 10 feet tall by wide. This is the one that you do want to plant, but unfortunately a lot of landscape companies out there don't know about this guy. It's called Firefly. Firefly only gets wide about 2 feet, 2.5 feet wide, and gets about 3 to 4 feet tall, easily maintained at that. It's not the one that's going to grow massive. It is still going to get the beautiful flowers on it. Exact same flowers as that guy. You can see the size of the leaf difference. That's how you know the difference between them. It's still going to attract all the hummingbirds and the native butterflies and what have you. Ask about your plants. Don't be afraid to go back and take a minute. Don't have them push you and say, okay, do you want to sign? Let's go, let's sign. Go back and take a minute, look at the plant list that they're giving you, and do some research. If you don't know what it is, Google's a wonderful thing. Busy Bee's a wonderful thing. They will give you the information that you're looking for. If you ask, they're going to be honest with you. When you get an estimate from me, I line item everything. I don't ever sit there and say, okay, plants or assorted plants for the landscape, which you'll see a lot of times. I line item everything, and you're also going to get from me a plant photo file that has the picture of the plant and the name on it, both the common and the botanical name, so you can go do research on your own. It's kind of important that way. This is another one that they use as a foundation plant, the viburnum. That's a very large shrub / tree. They get 15 feet tall by about 10 to 15 feet wide, and people try to keep them at 3 feet or less. Sometimes they'll keep them at 4 to 5 feet. Do you know how much pruning it takes to do that? Can you imagine going in and getting your hair cut all the time just to keep it at a certain height instead of allowing it to be planted in the right place, the right area, and giving it room to grow? That cuts down the cost of your maintenance. It cuts down the cost of the plants that you use because you're not trying to cram them all into one tiny space, and you're allowing it to grow into its beautiful natural form. Realistically, maintenance, you shouldn't be paying somebody to come out every week or bi-weekly to come in and cut your hedges, everything into hedges. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So that's about the plant spacing. When we go in and plant, it is key and critical to amend your soil and fertilizing. Amending soil means that we're adding some sort of organic material into the planting hole at a ratio of 50 to 50. Or 1 to 1. What that means is that whatever you dig out of the hole, that same amount is what you mix together and put back into it. There should never be any soil that's being taken off of a job. That means they're not doing it right. Because after you plant as well, if there is any excess soil, you create a water well. It's a ring that you put around the drip line or the base of the plant to focus the water at the roots of the plant until it gets established. That 50-50 soil amendment ratio is critical for the initial health of the plants, because if you don't know Florida soil, it's sand. We don't have any nutrients in Florida soil at all. People will often tell me, oh, my soil is nice and dark. Yeah, you know why it's dark? Because in these subdivisions, they dig out those lakes or the ponds. They build up the foundation of your plants or your homes. I go in and dig in that, and it's solid clay, the muck from the bottom of the ponds. And that is so unhealthy for the plants because they can't breathe. It's like being planted in concrete, and then it causes a water issue, root rot, all kinds of stuff. So when you amend the soil, it's improving the fertilization of the soil, but it's also improving the aeration of the soil too. When you purchase your plants, know or ask what your plant requirements are for fertilization. So the group that I have down at the end are all acid-loving plants, which means that our soils in Florida are really high alkaline, lime-based. These guys don't like that. So unless they're amended initially with a peat, organic peat soil, they're not going to do well. And then in the future, you have to amend with fertilization with an acid-loving granular fertilizer. You can't just blanket with all-purpose fertilizer. That's why you get like blotchy leaves. They don't have beautiful, bright colors. They start to decline. They don't last as long. The diseases come in because they're not getting the right food that it needs. These plants over here are ones that are, this is an acid-loving, I'm sorry, he should be down there. These are ones that will do well with all-purpose fertilizer. The palm trees have their own requirement needs. They have to have a palm-specific fertilizer. If you start to see yellowing of your trees or splotches on your palm trees, it's because they're not getting the magnesium, potassium that palm trees need to thrive. A lot of companies will say, oh yeah, you can use an all-purpose fertilizer on the palm trees. Yeah, that'll work for a while, but ultimately they're not getting the fertilization requirements that they need. Time to fertilize. Don't do it right at planting. Wait 6 weeks, because if you do it right at planting, you're burning those roots, those fresh new roots that are pushing into the soil. You will burn them and ultimately potentially cause the death of your plants. Wait that 6-week period and add a granular fertilizer that is specific to your plant needs. If somebody is designing your landscape properly, they will know or should know what plants they're grouping together, that they'll have these, or this section here is all acid loving. Great, I can go in with my granular fertilizer and add it into this section. This next section over here is all purpose. Great, I'm gonna grab my bag of all purpose fertilizer and fertilize around. If you have a palm tree in that mix, that's fine. You can add some palm specific fertilizer. If it gets on the roots of an all purpose required plant, it's not gonna hurt these guys, but it'll be better for this guy. Okay, so that's again back to the planning, right plant, right spot. Wait that 6 weeks, and then every 4 months you add granular fertilizer, except in the winter. Do not fertilize in the winter, because what does fertilization do? Pushes growth, right? We get a cold snap. It does happen in Florida once in a while. Usually end of December, definitely usually beginning of February, we get that cold snap. So if you fertilize end of November through that time period, all it's going to do is kill, when we get that cold snap, it's going to kill that new growth on the plant. So you wait until the end of February to do your next set of fertilization. Even if it's a little longer than 4 months, you still push it off, and then you can get on the proper cycle. A lot of people will say you cannot fertilize in the summer. That is not true. You cannot lawn fertilize in the summer, because all that washes off into the lagoons. You are allowed to fertilize your plants in the summer with a granular, because it lasts longer, okay? Maintenance and pruning. One of the key questions that you should be asking, two of the questions, sorry. How involved do you want to be with your landscape when it's done? I have a lot of clients that tell me I don't have the time or the inclination to want to be out in my garden and do any kind of landscaping. Fine, great. I'll just design a garden that's low maintenance. I have other clients that'll say, I like to go and fiddle around in my garden and get involved a little bit. I don't have time to be out there every single day. Great. We'll train you on pruning, weeding. There's others that want to be 100% hands-on, which means they're never going to hire a landscape company to maintain it. Great, I can plan for all of that for you. And I will also train you on how to take care of your plants. Realistically, if your landscape is planted properly, you should not need weekly or bi-weekly pruning on any of your plants unless you're looking for that crisp, clean hedge look. You have to ask yourself, do I like the look of the plant when it's planted like this, where it has its beautiful natural texture, like this, or like this guy, or this guy here? Any of these plants are perfect examples of the natural form of the plant. I cringe when I come up to a landscape and there's a hedge there, and then a hedge in front, and then this is a hedge, and this is a hedge, and this is a cube, and this is a sphere. I almost want to get in my truck and drive away. But I know that you haven't been trained properly, and the landscape company that's maintaining for you has not been trained properly. And unfortunately, there's so many properties down here that need to be maintained, and there's not a lot of people out there that have proper training and companies that train them properly. It just doesn't exist. So they don't know any better than to go in with the hedge shear and go, "Nyeh." Okay, we have that straight line. I almost cried. I did this beautiful design for a community entrance, the guardhouse. It was growing in beautifully. And then there was a miscommunication between their regular landscape company with how it was supposed to be maintained, the look they were going for, and I drove through the guardhouse and everything was cut into spheres and cubes. And I had this formal hedge that was already existing, the podocarpus right against the guardhouse, and then I planted Panama rose in front of it, which realistically, the Panama rose, once a year, cut it down, and then let it grow full. It looked so beautiful. The textures were amazing. They were playing off of one another, and now everything looks like a sphere and a cube, and I cry. I literally cry. They spent so much money on this landscape, and now it looks like, insert word here. So have a conversation with your landscape company. A lot of times, yes, I understand there's a communication barrier with the people that are actually doing the job for you, but don't be afraid to call the supervisor, the accounts manager, the owner of the company and say, listen, I want a different look for my landscape. Please let these go. Don't prune them every week. When you're pruning something every week, what are you losing off the plants as well? The flowers. You prune these all the time, you're never going to see them. You're never going to have butterflies. You're never going to have the hummingbirds. These have a really interesting flower. Right here it's starting. You're never going to get that. Okay? If it's planned and designed properly, I tell my customers all the time, you should only have to come in twice a year to do any kind of pruning. Sometimes once a year. And that one time a year is end of March, early April. You have that 1 month window that you do something called rejuvenation pruning. And that's where you take the shrub that's grown this tall and this wide, and you cut it down like this, and you cry and you cringe because, oh my God, there goes my beautiful plant. Guess what? In a couple weeks, it's already starting to push new growth, and then it knows, hey, I've got a whole year or even 6 months that I can grow and be beautiful and live and thrive without constantly having my head cut off. Okay? So don't be afraid to have that conversation with your landscape company to say, let's go a different route. It's going to take some time. You're going to get frustrated. Don't give up, but keep pushing them and ask, or find somebody that's willing to help you. You don't have to go with your HOA approved landscaper. I have a lot of customers that the landscape company that's contracted in that HOA, they just do the grass, and then we come in and take care of the garden for them. And you'll notice a big difference between the way their gardens look and the way my gardens look. You're going to be drawn to your house that's maintained by me or somebody else that knows how to do it properly. And just a side note, I don't have a whole lot of space left for maintenance, but for taking on new maintenance customers, but I am 100% happy with coming out and meeting with you and training you and teaching you the questions to ask and what to make your landscape look like, okay? Palm tree pruning. This is the last thing that I want to talk about this guy before I go for landscape or palm tree pruning. Okay, this is a clusia, and I specifically chose this one because I want you to show you this is still a baby. This particular plant grows 20 to 25 feet tall, and you want to maintain that at 2 to 3 feet tall with hedge trimmers. Why? Why would you want to do that? There are options like this guy. This is the same plant. This is the dwarf species. This one will only get 2 to 3 feet tall by wide. Why would you want to torture this guy and make him look ugly and sad for the rest of his life when you could choose the right plant for the right place? Okay? I have these guys in my back border at my house. I have never ever touched, and they are, without a word of a lie, 25 feet tall by about 15 to 20 feet wide. And they look amazing, and they look beautiful, and they're full right to the trunk. They're a little bit open. They're not meant to be like a full tight screen plant, but it's because I know how they're supposed to be planted. But typically they plant this right against your house, literally touching your house when it's planted. Same thing with the green arboricolas. They plant those touching. The green arboricolas grow 20 feet tall by wide. Why would you plant those touching and try to maintain them at that? It just doesn't make sense to me, okay? So now let's get over to our palm tree pruning. This guy is so happy right now. It's because he's in his pot, he's ready to go to his home, and he's gonna say, I know my new home that I'm going to is gonna be taking care of me beautifully and properly. And then a couple months from now, all of a sudden the landscape company comes in and starts cutting all these guys off and leaving this guy right here in the middle. Do you know how unhealthy that is for a palm tree of any sort? Not just this guy, any palm tree. If you prune it into that hurricane cut, even if you only do it once a year, it is so bad for your palm trees. I have an article that DJ has that he can get you a copy. I also have a digital copy that I can send to you. I have done so much research on this topic to know that what I'm trying to teach my clients and people that come to hear me, that it is so unhealthy to prune your palm trees like that. If it is a self-booting palm tree, which means that these guys fall off on their own, which this particular variety does, you should never be pruning this. Ever, ever, ever. If it's planted against your pool screen where it's touching, so you have to constantly plant that, maybe you should have rethought where it was planted. Not you, but the landscaper should have planted where it was proper. I see oftentimes those palm trees touching your soffits or your gutters when it's planted. If it's a self-booting tree, which you'll get told all the time, oh, you don't have to worry about it because those boots are gonna fall off. Do you know how heavy a foxtail palm boot is? You're looking at about 10 pounds, 8 to 10 pounds. As it grows up and up and up, it's 15, 20 feet tall, and that boot falls on your roof, your gutter, or whatever, the edge of your roof. Do you really think it's not gonna cause damage to your roof? Move that tree away. It is possible to move a fuller sized tree out away from your house. It's tricky. We just moved one recently that was a 60-gallon size pot. It had been in the ground for a year. It was already 13 to 15 feet tall, and they had it planted right underneath the soffits. We moved it back and away. It looks beautiful. It opened up the front of the house, but it is critical that you plan for that and know the spread of your tree, okay? The ones that do need pruning that are not self-booting, which means that the fronds are not going to drop on their own, please, please, please wait until they are yellow or fully dead before you prune them off, and you prune them right back to the trunk. I didn't think to grab a pygmy date palm. Take them right back to here. Don't cut them out here because then you're looking at all this ugly dead stick stuff. Yeah, I know there's big thorns on the pygmy date palms, but cut them right back to the trunk when they are yellow or dead. The reason why we do that is because palm trees feed off the lowest ring of fronds. So if you cut that lowest ring of fronds when they're still green, they're gonna automatically start feeding from the next ring of fronds. So you're gonna get in this vicious cycle, and it goes pretty quickly that you'll see those new green ones that you just pruned up because it's pretty, they're automatically starting to turn yellow. It's because this plant is drawing its nutrients from the lower fronds. Your palm tree should always be kept at a 10 and 2 at the very most. A 9 and 3 is better, okay? It is not better for your palm trees to be cut to a hurricane cut because we're coming into hurricane season. That is such bad misinformation, I can't even tell you. The whole point of the fronds on the outside of the tree is to protect your palm tree. It's supposed to allow those to move. You allow the outer fronds to move in those winds, and it protects the center core of the tree. If you don't have these outer fronds to protect that center core, what's gonna happen in a hurricane? It's gonna break out, right? and then you have no palm tree. These are expendable. That's why the tree does that. It can lose these without hurting the tree. The tree is supposed to move in the wind. That's how it stays safe, okay? So that's the last thing that I wanted to talk about, other than to point out one more beautiful tree. Okay, sorry, two more. I grabbed too many plants. This guy is called a fiddle leaf fig. He is beautiful. You'll see him inside a lot. Does wonderful inside, does wonderful outside. It is a tree. It is minimum 15 to 20 feet tall by wide, and yet I see them planted right against a house all the time, or in a pool courtyard in a screen enclosure. You can keep them pruned, they just don't look as pretty. So keep in mind that these ones you want to have the space for them to grow. If you're gonna put them in a pot, it needs a big pot because it'll break your pot. The roots will just push and crack that. This guy is one of my favorites. This is the last one available here. I'll lift it up. This is a powder puff. They do have some whites there. They do have some pinks over in the garden center, but this is the last white one. A lot of people buy this and think it's gonna stay this size, and it's beautiful. It is also a tree. This one gets massive, like 25 to 30 foot width to get its true beauty. And its true beauty is amazing. It's got arching branches that come down and create this umbrella type canopy. If you leave it where it's not constantly pruned, you get these incredible flowers literally all year long. The butterflies flock to them. Like, it's just incredible. But don't buy it and think you're gonna use it as a foundation planting. Right plant, right place. This is a newer plant. It was introduced a few years ago. It is called a mast tree. This is what was introduced to replace the Italian cypresses, because now the Italian cypresses, although they're beautiful, they don't like our hot, humid weather down here. They get a fungus that attacks them. They're prone to spider mite, all kinds of diseases and insects that make them look not pretty. This tree will get about 15 to 20 feet tall, slow growing, like you're gonna go gray before you watch it grow tall. That's why you can buy them smaller, but don't think they're gonna get to this size next year. It's gonna take a minute. But they stay narrow. It's a narrow columnar tree that is a beautiful texture. They don't drop their leaves often. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous tree. So they are a little bit pricier, but well worth the investment. They're not prone to diseases and insects, so you don't have to have the pesticide companies coming out and spraying all the time.